Hi, I'm Andrew Baker. I'm a policy analyst at the Centre for Independent Studies. I'm joined by Dr. Andrew Leigh, the federal member for Fraser, and Tommy Tudehope, a social media expert and a former Liberal advisor. Welcome, gentlemen. Dr. Leigh, first to you. I'd like to, you've said that technological changes had a substantial impact on inequality of political information. It's led to a divide between those who are politically engaged and those who are not. I was wondering how you think, how large those groups are, how many people are engaged and how many people are disengaged?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string question, I guess, Andrew. Some people are engaged in different ways, but I would regard the most engaged consumers in Australia, those who purchase a daily newspaper, for example, as being a small share of the population. So newspaper circulation, last time I checked, is about 10 papers for every 100 adults. So that suggests there's a large share of Australians who don't read a paper, and that's one proxy for engagement.
And you've suggested that newspaper subsidies would be a means to getting the disengaged to become more engaged. How do you measure that success, and how would you calculate, say, the cost-benefit analysis of turning the disengaged into the engaged?
Look, it's a great question. I mean, what I did in the talk was to reflect two proposals that are out there, one from Lindsay Tanner for a grants-based subsidy system, one from Malcolm Turnbull for giving quality newspapers tax deductibility status. I don't think I'm ready to sign on to either of those proposals, but I do think quality journalism is really important to Australia's democracy, and thinking about ways of sustaining quality journalism is important, and these are worth looking into, and for me the test is, do they engage more people? If all they do is provide more information to the best informed, that doesn't pass the test for me. I want to know that we're democratising information, we're engaging people who 30 years ago would have read a newspaper but now don't.
Tommy, I'll bring you in. How do you think that social media is impacting the democratisation of information? Is this a good thing, a bad thing?
Well, ultimately it should be a good thing. I think it gives another mechanism or another means for politicians to communicate with the public, to communicate about policy ideas, policy positions, and inform the public about future directions or government policy, and I think that is a good thing. But whether the politicians actually use it effectively and actually use it to genuinely engage seems to be the challenging part where we're currently at.
Just generally to both of you, do you think Twitter and Facebook, does that actually win votes for politicians, or can it win votes, or is it sort of a negative, or it's just a waste of time?
I think first and foremost it's about engaging with citizens and trying to improve the quality of the political debate. But I think Tommy's absolutely right in talking about the way in which politicians need to adapt to the new technologies. So this huge technological shock, of which Twitter is a part, has, I think, left us all kind of reeling back on our heels. It's caused sometimes journalism which is sloppier than it should be, because print journalists are now competing with online journalists to be first with a story. And it's left politicians sometimes falling back on scripted lines rather than making coherent arguments. So all of us can do better, but all of us are in the middle of this sort of tidal wave of technology that's sweeping over us.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think sites like Facebook and Twitter have a potential to be a vote winner. I think you only have to look overseas to see how the US and UK politicians use it to demonstrate just how effective it can be as an electioneering tool. But I still think we're waiting for a watershed moment here where politicians actually adopt it in a more genuine fashion and actually use it to their advantage. And that can be things like, micro donations or community activism, or things like personal data. But it certainly can be vote-winning tools.
Okay, I'll just turn briefly to existing funding for the ABC. I did some research before, and the ABC is going to receive about $1 billion through television and radio, and SBS is going to receive another $200 million. How has this money sort of failed to engage, or has this not failed to engage the disengaged? And why do we need additional subsidies for newspapers to engage this population?
I think the ABC is enormously important in the national conversation. I lived in the United States for 4 years, and one of the things I missed the most was that sort of quality discussion of big ideas that you get, say, on Radio National, that sense that Australians can engage in a conversation about design, books, philosophy, science. In the US, you get it occasionally with NPR, but then you have to put up with their maddening fundraising drives. And so, I love that about Australia. But I think there's also a sense of investigative journalism which has traditionally resided in newspapers, and there's something important about the newspaper industry which I wouldn't want to lose. That doesn't mean we have to keep on printing them, but I think it does mean that even if they shift online, we need to make sure that quality newspapers are sustained.
Tommy, can social media fill the gap that newspapers seem to be seeing?
I think it potentially can. On the ABC question, I don't have a particularly forensic view on it, but I would hate to see less funding for the ABC. I think it's probably one of the beacons of good journalism in Australia. Sure, there can always be more scrutiny on government spending, and especially around the ABC, but I think where social media comes into it, it can fill the void, but I think we're only getting to that stage now where consumers are comfortable paying for news online. Now, that culture will become far more ingrained over the years, but there is an onus of responsibility on outlets like the ABC and Fairfax to create that culture of good online quality journalism and a culture where consumers are actually comfortable paying for it and it's easily accessible, and that's an enormous challenge as most media outlets are facing, but one that I think they should relish and take with open arms.
One of the big challenges with the ABC also, Andrew, is us being comfortable with the idea that this huge technology change is going to mean the ABC needs to experiment. And I think there has been a bit of conservatism among ABC lovers in letting them try new things. But they have to. There's so much going on. We have to let the ABC change what it does, and that will mean not doing some things it used to.
One final question, should the ABC expand into the newspaper business?
I can't see it working. I don't think that, in general, there's not a great track record for government-run newspapers. I'm not quite sure why this is. I can't give you a good theoretical argument as to why a site like The Drum can work, but a site like the Sydney Morning Herald couldn't be run by the government. But just in my gut, I can't see a government newspaper being sustainable. We have some great newspapers in the country at the moment. I'd prefer to see us thinking creatively about how to save them rather than trying to build something from the ground up.
Yeah, I think they could, to disagree. But I think people get too caught up with this notion of Imprint. Why couldn't they do an iPad-only newspaper, or something like that? They've already got a plethora of content. They've got more content than the other outlets got. They've got, video, commentary sites and news sites and radio. So I don't see why they can't sort of manipulate or duplicate some of that content onto different forms and think about new technologies. And, I think there's too much, obsession with this whole idea of a newspaper being in print and being delivered daily. I don't see why they can't explore different avenues, and I think they should be open to new ideas like that.
So you think it'd be more efficient to take whatever money was being put into subsidies and think about allowing the ABC to expand across forms rather than subsidising the Herald or the Australian or whatever?
I'd like to think that's a better option. I'm not a big fan of subsidising newspapers. I think it creates an uneven culture of who do you subsidise and who do you don't. And I'm more in favour of pushing the technological envelope and seeing where that goes. So I think that's, ideally you've got to meet the consumer at their market in their time, and I think that's what the advantage is, or the opportunity at least is.
Andrew Leigh, Tommy Tudehope, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.